What's good? Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third episode of The Perfect Play, the podcast that teaches you how to make your next move your best move. I am IAmCWill, the coach, and I'm your host for today. And I'm accompanied by none other than my co-host, Tim Spicer, and my great marketing rep. And today we have a few guests joining us, coaches of PeerForward and special guests of our workshop leadership team. But co-host, marketing rep, coaches, y'all say what's up to the people.
What's going on? It's Spice checking in for The Perfect Play. Third time's the charm, so we handed it to Cornelius to lead this episode. What's up?
Hey everyone, this is Victoria, the marketing rep. This is my first time on the podcast, so I'm very excited to be here with you all.
What's up, V? Welcome.
Got Victoria.
Hey, it's your girl AJ. You know, I'm feeling it as a coach today, so I'm stepping up and I'm stepping in. What's good?
What's going on, family? It's your good brother Mike here once again, here to join you and rock out.
All right, cool. Thank you for checking in, everybody. So we love to check in, and just like every training camp, every huddle, every meeting, every time we see each other, we have to check in. And so it's only right that we check in for every episode. So listeners, today the check-in is up close and personal. All right, so we're all up in your quarantine space with this one. And so today our check-in is called If I Had to Choose. So many of us are confined to our homes during this pandemic. Fortunately or unfortunately, we did not get to choose who we should or who we wanted to quarantine with. So our check-in for today is if you had to choose just one famous person, just one, to quarantine with, who would that person be and why? Ooh.
This is real personal. I could go first. You mind if I go first?
Man, talk to him, Tim. Come on, Spice.
I'd have to quarantine with the late, great Ermias, also known as Nipsey Hussle, because, one, he was one of our, heroes that were taken too soon. But I think in a time like this, he could really show me how to move, how to maximize the time, how to make a right business plan, business approach, how to alter my perspective, but just an inspirational human being that I could probably gain a lot from just from sitting at home and being able to take advantage of that conversation. So Nipsey Hussle would have to be my go-to.
Check. All right, check you out. Nipsey West Coast. Who else want to check in?
All right, I can go. All right, this is a hard question just because I feel like sometimes with famous people, you don't really know them like that. You don't know like what their personality like is behind that veil. So I think I'm going to go with somebody like a famous chef because I feel like I really like to cook. I feel like they could step up my cooking game, and it also means I'd get to eat great food the whole time. So I don't know if you guys have seen that show on Netflix called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. But her name is Samin Nosrat. She's an amazing chef, but she cooks really good food, and I just think that would make my quarantine way better.
All right, check. Victoria, you're a good cook too, though. I saw your Instagram.
I know, but I could do better. I could learn some things. I could step it up.
All right, that's what's up.
So Victoria, I had the exact same idea, but she a little something extra on it. So, Patti LaBelle, love to cook, but also, I would love to hear, some of my favorite songs and have my house sound like Sunday morning. So I'm choosing Patti LaBelle.
Ooh.
I like that.
Hey, all right. Patti LaBelle, we got some cooks, we got some singers. Anybody else want to check in at the table?
I would definitely actually go with, Mrs. Michelle Obama. I feel like I would love to sit down and just pick her brain during this quarantine time. I think she has a lot of insights that often go overlooked, so it'll be a great time.
That's real. The whole Obamas, if I could pick the whole family, the whole Obama's coming over for dinner. This is what, day 21?
Right,
So,
Mike, you got to clear that with Barry first. Just trying to invite somebody's wife over for quarantine, bro.
Oh, man. So I actually was thinking about this question this whole week, and I had to be strategic about the person that I quarantined with. And it would have to be Jay-Z. Right now I'm in a space of investing. Yeah, the Rock 444. So I'm in that space of investing, man, and making the best moves right now during this stock market, not crisis, but pandemic. And so really would want to pick his brain about, his investments and how did he make it to be a billionaire? Even though I can read about it, I think it's a lot better when you can act like you had said, Mike, with Michelle, man, just having that conversation over time. There's a lot of things that I know I can learn and set myself up. So, yeah, man, that's who I would quarantine with. But I'm good right now. I love my family, so we're good. So hopefully all of that, man. But that's our check-in for today. I'm actually asked, one of our experts who we have with us on the phone today. Y'all want to say real quick, who would be one famous person that you would quarantine with and why? Bill?
So I would quarantine with Karen Hunter, who is my favorite radio talk show host because, one, she's really smart, and two, she is hilarious. So that's what I would like to spend some time with her.
All right. Karen. Karen. Mr. Kevin.
I would want to quarantine with, it's not surprising, but Tupac.
Ooh.
And the reason being is that he's talking a lot about political issues just prior to his death. And I want to know back now, what do you think about what's going on in our political environment now? What's your thoughts? And I would like to pick his brain on that.
All right, that's real. Thank you. Great Tupac, the great poet, man. Tupac, that's a real one. Thank you for checking in with us. So in the comments below, man, ladies and gentlemen, listeners all out there across the world, let us know who would you quarantine with. If you could choose one person, one famous person, why? And we'll check in next week to see what some interesting things we got. So thank you all for checking in with us. Remember to check with your family, check in with your friends during this quarantine. But always check in with yourself to make sure that you're doing well and your personal fitness and health is key. Check. All right, cool. So on today's episode, we're going to hop right into it, man. We got some good stuff coming to you, compiling your college list. So we got two very credible experts in the field who will help us and kind of help you understand how to draft and pursue your college list. Now, our special guests, they have a niche for leading, training, and coaching staff on the nuts and bolts of compiling your college list, your dream list. They've done it for many years in our college access space at our training camps and workshops. But really, the question is, how do we turn our dreams into reality? And so many of us are weighing acceptances and different college choices that are coming in and scholarships and things like that right now. And for my college grads, you might even be looking into your graduate degree programs, right? And so we're all for that next step. And so, but it's really time for us right now to narrow down what is it that we need to do to create our post-secondary plans, especially for our juniors, our high school sophomores and freshmen out there. This is the time now. Don't wait until your senior year to start creating your college list. And so I'm going to actually pitch to my man, Tim Spicer, my co-host on the day, to tell the listeners, man, what can we expect from this episode or this conversation today?
Oh, most definitely, man. I mean, they're in for a treat because once again, this is our first time where we've even included live guests on the conversation. So we're happy to have our experts. But first, we get to hear from a coach or two about how they selected their institution, learning about their thought process as to why or what drove their decision to the institution. We then take it to the experts and hear some of their experience and their perspective about what are they telling students in the field about applying to college? What should they be looking for when they're trying to make that decision? Our hope is that they can open our eyes to more perspectives, opportunities, and experiences. So you're in for a treat on the episode 3 of The Perfect Play.
Chad, thanks for that, Tim, man. So there's a lot of things that we're going to learn today. But most importantly, I think it's time for our coaches to check in. And so we have a few coaches, man. Coaches, please go ahead and introduce yourselves and what college that you went to. And just give us one piece of advice right now on what point did you know that you wanted to actually go to college? So what point in your life did it kind of click for you?
Hey, so I'll start. It's AJ. So I went to Georgetown. I graduated in 2016. Stayed here in Washington, D.C. and love it every day. So glad I went. But I actually found out that I wanted to go to college back when I was up in Atlanta. My older sister was a part of Upward Bound. And so as a part of that program, she was sent on college tours. And it just so happened that one of our spring breaks overlapped and they allowed me to go too. And so I was there on a college tour, just 13 years old with a whole bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds who were super excited about starting their lives. And they talked about all the things that they wanted. And it was just, I thought they were so cool. And so for me, being around my sister and her peers who thought college was cool, I just grew up from the age of 13, like thinking this is what I want to do because those people are excited about it. This is so cool. I'll do the exact same thing.
Check. Thanks, AJ. That's real, man. Double Down is a huge program, and seeing them actually take you on to college campuses, I think it does change a lot of things in your mindset. It's kind of the same thing we do at PeerForward when we take our seniors and our juniors to college campuses and training camps and workshops and such.
So this is Mike, family. For myself, I would say I really didn't look at college as a viable option or a reality for myself until about the age of 17, actually my junior going into senior year. I ended up going to my then PeerForward workshop at Yale University, and it was pretty life-changing. Prior to that, my goal was just to graduate high school and get a government job because that was the highest thing my family attained. So through all of that, I ended up actually attending Damon College, and I'll share more about that later.
Nice, Mike. Nice, Mike. Thanks for sharing. I mean, let's take it a bit even further. I mean, you knew that you wanted to go to college. Even for me, my dad went to North Carolina A&T and my mom went to Bennett. And so the family had always had this expectation that I was going to college. But when I was thinking about what institution I wanted to go to, I knew I had to be in Atlanta. So my question for the coaches, what were some of the main characteristics you sought when you were selecting that institution? Like, what was the biggest thing or the most important piece that your college had to have when you were trying to figure out where you'd be for the next 4 years? Mike?
Yeah, for me, honestly, I intended to go to a HBCU, and I ended up at a PWI, but what I realized, what I was looking for was community. And I wanted to initially get that community feel from the HBCU experience. It was something I kind of glorified initially, and I think HBCU definitely provided that. But what my school provided was a more intimate community where what I didn't know I needed at the time was that individualized attention. And I know many schools offer that, but I think my school made it clear that if I attended, that was the experience I was definitely going to find. So without a shadow of doubt, it was that idea of community and not recognizing that I needed that individualized attention in small classroom size.
All right, so you was looking at the community feel, that small feel, more intimate at a university when you were trying to pick that college. Thanks for sharing. What about you, AJ?
For me, I just wanted it to be in a city I could see myself in. So I did a lot of moving around it as a kid. And so I knew that location is super, super important to me. I grew up in cities, so I wanted to stay in a city, but I didn't necessarily want to stay where I was currently in my hometown in New Haven. I definitely want to explore something new. And so being able to look outside of just Connecticut and looking at different cities that I could see myself in was just super important to me. And that really, really made a difference when it came to Georgetown, because I could be somewhere new, but I could still hop on the train and be home in 4 hours.
Right.
Ditto. Same for me, AJ. 4 hours was the max. 4 hours. I had to be able to drive there, man, to get back in one day.
Yeah.
What? I was 9 hours from home, and I didn't come home till maybe that first Christmas. So anybody out there that wants to go far, get away as much as you can afford it.
Yeah, this is your shot. This is your shot to do it.
You're right. You're right.
So, coaches, man, I know y'all thought about the colleges and some characteristics that you have from every institution, but just thinking about those, your fit, did y'all have a college list? And if you did, how many schools were on your list? And I'm interested to hear. Victoria, we can hear from you too.
Absolutely not. I did not have a list. I knew I wanted to go to Morehouse, and nobody could tell me otherwise. So when we made a list at the workshop that I went to, but Morehouse was at the top of the list, and that was my focus. I mean, I sent my application out to say Hampton because they were a Virginia school. But other than that, I had my eggs in one basket. Not the smartest decision, but I knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to make happen for self. But that's just me.
All right, Tim. All right, Victoria, what was your thought process?
All right. So when I was first thinking about it, I'd say my list was very small and very limited to Texas schools, right? Because I grew up in Texas. But I was very open-minded with my list. So I didn't want to be really rigid. So if I talked to somebody at a college fair or something, talked to an alumni and learned about a different college, I was still trying to be open-minded and keep my list open for things that interested me that maybe weren't in my initial criteria. And that's kind of how I finally ended up looking at the college that I did, because, nobody in my family had really been to that college, heard of that college. So it was through just like informational interviews, talking to college reps, talking to alumni, that I was able to expand my list beyond what I imagined that it would be at the beginning.
Right. So using your resources is key to like figuring out what's the best fit for you. There's a lot of colleges, over 4,000 in the United States. And to think about just the ones in your state, that's the right fit for you. You guys got to explore and be open to change. And so just like Tim said, being able to move far away from home, sometimes you got to give up some things in order to gain something. So keep that in mind when you guys are figuring out what colleges is best fit for you. Mike, what's up?
Yeah, so for me, I was a little hard-headed. Initially, my list was, as I mentioned earlier, HBCU heavy, and coupled in with a few schools from the New York City area, mainly CUNY schools. But as I spoke to some more folks, kind of broadened my horizons. The school I actually ended up attending kind of found me, and they reached out to me. And the more I spoke with the admissions rep, the more I spoke with the team and other students that attended the college, I realized that I had to broaden my way of thinking, what I wanted, how I wanted it to look. I think that was the big process for me, was expanding how my college experience would look versus where I wanted it to actually take place.
That's real, man. That's real. Thank you for sharing that, Mike. That's real. Just thinking about colleges sometimes find you. I received mail in the mail from colleges recruiting me, and I thought I was that man. Colleges, local town was like, hey, we want you to come to our school. And that's actually how I found out about a lot of colleges. University of South Florida. Never heard about it. It's not in Miami. It's not in South Florida. It's in Tampa. And so to actually think about the name and where the school is located, put them on my radar. And that was actually the school that I chose. And so I actually chose to go to that school as my final decision, simply because they were the most diverse school in Florida, and that's what they promoted. And so I'm going to ask my coaches, man, how did y'all make y'all final decision? And did you have any regrets or reservations when you made that decision? AJ, what's up?
So I made my final decision off of my list, because on my college list, I actually had Georgetown on my list from College Summit, old school PeerForward. And it was so amazing. I like went back to my list and I found it and I couldn't believe it. But ultimately, I ended up going to Georgetown because a teacher was like, it would be kind of dumb not to, like, and it was somebody I really respected. So to have him be like, I think you should really think hard about this. Like, this is a perfect fit for you. I know you can do so much here. Like, it was really, really encouraging. And so I had somebody with me that really pushed me to go a little bit further. So that was awesome.
Hey, check. Thank you, AJ. It's always good to have somebody in your corner who's pushing you to get to that next level, because what you think you can do, they think you can do better. And so having somebody who can see that in you, and that's actually what we're going to be talking about today, thinking about your college list. Don't do their job for them, ladies and gentlemen, listening out there. Apply, and don't think that you aren't the one for that school.
Facts. I mean, that final decision is hard. You got to think about where you want to spend the rest of your 4 years. And during my matriculation at Morehouse College, there were a lot of things that I learned and grew to appreciate. So whether you were at your dream college or that institution, for the 4 years, what's one thing you learned to appreciate about your college? Victoria, I'd be interested in learning what you appreciated up at the prestigious Princeton. You mind sharing with the listeners?
All right, sure. Thank you, Tim. All right, so at Princeton, what I really appreciated, so it was very far away from city life. So if that's something you're looking for, it was a really great place, but it was very a calming area. Like, there was a lot of like trails and nature around the campus. So it just felt like, to me, a very calm place where I could go through the really stressful experience of college in those 4 years. And it was also something I appreciated from it was the focus on independent work. So if you had a project or research interest that you just like really felt passionate about, there were a lot of resources to take that, and you got to write a senior thesis on that or do a lot of independent projects, travel abroad. So I felt like there was a real big value on you pursuing your academic interests.
Oh, yeah, I like that. You got to see your school you're telling me I could create my own major or...
You could create your own major. You could write a whole book, a senior thesis on a topic that you liked. Do all of that.
Nice. Yeah. Y'all need to look at colleges like that. That's allowing you to really explore your academic interests. Thanks for sharing. What about you, Mike? What's one thing you learned to appreciate? Now, we were able to come up to Damon for a workshop and really get to be in your world for a minute. There were some things I appreciated, but what about you?
Yeah, I would, admittedly, I would say for me, it would be the staff, right? Particularly the Black and brown staff, from our faculty to the advisors. I would say I wouldn't have graduated without them, right? I think when you come from particular neighborhoods, environments, and backgrounds, you need people to relate to. And you need people that have gone before you that can connect to your story and understand how you operate without ever having to go through the intimate details. And I think for all things that Damon offered, I think the staff that kept their eyes, hearts open to students like myself was a game changer. So I am an educator now because of them. So shout out to them in particular. And I think they are the motivating force for a lot of reasons why students actually survive and pass on at PWIs.
No, good point, Mike. And I mean, I just want to take people back to what you first said. One, it was that you wanted to go to an HBCU, but you grew to appreciate those African-American supports on campus. And so whether or not you go to an HBCU, there's different types of people, whether they be in your race or outside of your race, that have an influence on your decisions in college and how you really shape the individual you want to be as you prepare to be a graduate of that institution. So ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to go to a HBCU to be supported by people that look like you. So keep that in mind and think about what Mike said and just how to be able to take advantage of those resources. So we're at the end of our discussion, but I have one more question for the coaches that selected their college. And I'll answer first, but would you recommend your school of choice to any rising seniors? Honestly, I recommend what you can afford. Morehouse College was expensive. I was grateful enough to have those type of resources in place, and it was a great time. I studied abroad. I pledged the greatest noble frat in the entire universe, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I graduated in time. So it was a blast. I met the love of my life there, but you also want to just think about, I just try to be real with people. Like if college is going to break you financially, it's supposed to project you somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? But if you can afford it, you should pursue it. And if you can't afford it, you figure out how to afford it. But I recommend it without a doubt. But I'd also make a smart recommendation when applying to Morehouse College. But Mike, AJ, Victoria, would you recommend your school of choice to any rising seniors? Looking at the live audience, they say Mike's saying no. Mike's saying no.
For me, you know what? I'm not gonna say no. I'm gonna just say proceed with caution. Because here's the thing, Tim. I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. Go where you can afford. And the thing that I liked about my school was that because I couldn't afford it, they met my need 100%. And because of that, like I'm in a bit better position now. And I'm super, super grateful for that. But at the same time, that school, Georgetown, is academically very challenging and it's very competitive. And so, I came in, just trying to enjoy myself. And it felt like, at the same time of enjoying yourself, you are also competing. And so that's something I had to adjust to, learn how I was going to live, around that expectation. And I think that, if you feel like that's something you can do, you can make the experience about you, then go ahead, because like I said, I'm in a better position because of it.
Thanks for sharing, AJ. We hear that.
I'll just echo what AJ said. I have a very similar sentiment about my own college too and recommending it. Great place for you to pursue your academic interests. Also meets 100% of your financial needs. So those two things alone are very convincing things. I would say just my caution is when I went in, I think there was a lot I didn't know about kind of the culture of the school. I felt very out of place there. I had to like really build up that confidence to say like I earned my spot here. So just going into it, knowing that if you're going there, your spot is yours and you belong there too.
If you're going there, then the spot is yours too. I like that, Victoria.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, man. We got this time for our special guest. But before we get there, we got our marketing piece who's going to share some tips and tricks on marketing and also what you can do right now as you are home in this pandemic and what you stay sane. Victoria, talk to us.
All right, thanks, Cornelius. So I'll just start by shouting out our coaches once again. And if you know our coaches, you know that they have a wealth of knowledge about the college admissions process, but also just encouraging you to accomplish your future goals, whatever those may be. So now that a lot of our world and schooling has gone virtual, our coaches are offering virtual office hours for you so that you can still tap into them as a resource and they can be there to help you through those stressful and complicated processes that you're going through right now. So if you're looking for that extra guidance from our amazing coaches, you can get in touch with your PeerForward coach directly and set up a time for office hours virtually. But the next thing that I really wanted to talk about was just bringing awareness to April, which is actually National Stress Awareness Month. We should care very much about like how to reduce stress because studies have shown that a lot of stress can actually reduce your immune response and weaken your immune system, which is like the total opposite of what we want right now. So I was just trying to think of some ways that I used in high school or through college to reduce my stress and stay calm inside internally to keep myself at my best. So the two things that I'm going to suggest to everyone is mindfulness and movement. So the first one, mindfulness, is really just about bringing your awareness back to the present moment. So when you're in a stressful situation, your heart starts beating really fast and your mind feels like it's racing. So one way to bring yourself back to a calm state is to just take account of what's around you, bring in all the senses, see what's around you visually, the kinds of smells, the kinds of sounds that you're hearing, and just sort of ground yourself in the present moment. One of my favorite ways to do this is actually if you just like start rubbing your hands together, like if you were outside and it was cold and you're trying to warm yourself up. And that kind of brings some warmth back to your hands and it helps you to feel like you're in control of your body's response. So whenever you're in stress, whenever you're in doubt, just rub your hands together.
Rub your hands like Birdman? Like
rub your hands like your palms.
Oh, your palms, not like Birdman.
No, that's completely wrong. That is not at all what you're supposed to. Like if you're outside on a cold day or you're like by a fire, you know, you want your hands to be toasty. All right. And the second movement, we all know movement, right? Get outside, take a walk, get in some fresh air. But when you're stressed, you have that like fight or flight energy in your body, right? So you're really tense and you have a lot of energy building up. And so it's good to just kind of get that energy out by stretching, finding a yoga video online or some kind of at-home workout, but just channeling that energy, that physical energy that you have built up, channeling it into some kind of relaxing movement that's going to help you like coast through that very stressful moment. So those are my two tips. Lastly, I'll just close really quick by saying if you're looking for ways to get involved to help students, like we said, through this very stressful process, one of the great ways is to volunteer at our summer workshops. So we have positions open for college coaching and writing coaching. So whatever you feel like is your strongest suit, you can find the applications to volunteer at summer workshops online on our website. If you click on volunteer, you'll be able to find the portal where you'll find our summer workshop application. All right, that's all for me. I'll turn it back to you, Cornelius.
Thank you, Victoria. Dropping bombs, the double limbs, man. And workshops, baby. MMW, let's do it. And so talking about workshops, we have our two expert guests today who I am proud to introduce to you all. You heard Bill last week dropping the 5 things to know about your financial aid award letter. He brought his friend today, Mr. Kevin Naiker and Bill Craig. They've been with us for years. I've known them for 5 years now. And just want them to come on. Y'all give them a round of applause.
Yeah, Ebony. Ivory.
Perfect harmony.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Bill and Craig, just give us a little background information about you and your role at PeerForward. We can start with Bill.
Okay. Well, I have been in K-12 education for over 40 years. I was a teacher and a principal, and I was an assistant superintendent of a school district right outside Richmond, Virginia, and have sort of converted to part-time work now. So I do some consulting with school districts in the United States, as well as I do some work with schools in the Middle East. I have volunteered with PeerForward and College Summit since 2010, and I've served as a college coach, a writing coach coordinator, and director of college coaching. And my very first workshop was under the direction of my now very good friend, Dr. Kevin Naiker.
Doctor, thanks for sharing, Bill. Welcome.
Thank you, Bill. My experience is kind of unique. I was born in Cape Town, South Africa, came here more than 30 years ago. So my role, my background is in counseling psychology. I spent over 25 years in college access. AJ was talking about field trips. I was with Upward Bound and Talented, spent about 20 years there. Then I was trained as a psychologist, a counseling psychologist, went into teaching. Right now, I'm teaching counseling psychology, essentially, at a local community college here. So that's just in a nutshell my background. And I've been with College Summit PeerForward since 2003.
Ooh. Well, these two gentlemen have a wealth of expertise to drop on us today. So we'll jump right into our first question. But once again, thanks, Dr. Naiker, and thanks, Bill Craig, for joining us. So without further ado, could you tell us a bit about why is it important that students create a college list, and what are some of the benefits associated with having options when you apply?
Well, I'll start. And I think the most important reason to have a list is and to have options is because your preferences might change, and what you think's important at the beginning of your senior year may change over the course of the year. The other part is financial. And I think college education is one of those unusual things where you really don't know what it's going to cost to the very end of the process when you get your financial aid award letter. And so having some options, having some financial options gives you a chance is really important, I think, in making sure that you have an option that's affordable to you.
Nice. Thank you.
So I want to agree with Bill. I also want to add, just some things. One of the things that I consider really good to have a list is what I call the three goods. The first one, it has to be a good fit for you, that list. What do I mean by good fit? It basically means culturally that you have to be able to fit in there, socially that it have the resources that you need socially to be successful at that institution, and then also financially, can you afford it? Will they provide 100% of your financial need? The fourth thing is distancing, and Tim dropped an important thing there. He says, go away as far as you can afford. And that is critical, because if you want to come home, how often do you want to come home? That costs money. The second thing is, and Bill talked about this, is the blend. We used to talk about reaches and safeties. But what I want to talk about is basically making sure that it provides the necessary, there are selective colleges that you have, very competitive ones, but then you also have ones that both based on your GPA and test scores that you can get in now. And I think the last thing is number, and we can talk more about that, but it's good to have what I believe is at least between 3 and 10. And if you have that good number between 3 and 10, research basically shows that the more colleges you have on your list, the better your chances of getting into the schools.
Nice. Thanks. Thank you. Both well-rounded answers. And I think you even answered the next question, because as you know, at PeerForward, we charge our peer leaders with applying to 3 or more colleges. And I mean, why should they apply to 3 or more? You said it perfectly. You have a better chance of actually getting into the college. Is that always true?
So for me, Tim, the advantage or almost the requirement for 3 or more colleges is exactly as Kevin described. We want to make sure you have at least a couple choices where you're confident that you're going to be admitted. You're confident it's a place that you're going to really be happy with for 4 years. And you're confident that it's affordable for you and your family. So if we want to identify at least a couple of those. But one of our really critical goals in college coaching is to expand options. So we want peer leaders to think about schools that they may not have considered, whether, if they're looking at large universities, let's add a small liberal arts college. Let's add maybe a single gender college, or even a college that maybe the average SAT scores are a little bit higher than what their current ones are. So we want to stretch them a little bit. So in order to do that, you really need to have a college list with a number of entries on it.
What I like about what you said, Bill, is that can your family afford it? A lot of the times colleges get into this thing where they're pitching college to the student. You got to pitch it to the entire generation. So we appreciate that caveat. Dr. Naiker, anything else you'd like to add?
I want to agree with Bill. And one of the things that we said, is for students, for peer leaders to keep an open mind. Because a lot of times, people come in with a list of colleges based on where their friends have gone. Now, that may be a good fit for that person. It may not be a good fit for you. So the key is keep an open mind. And we're not saying scrap what you have, but look at other options, as Bill pointed out.
You got to have options. It's like tennis shoes. I mean, you might wear the same shoes every day, but if you going to church, you're going to put on them church shoes. So you got to have options. We appreciate that. Thanks for sharing, gentlemen.
Hey, that's real, man. Having options. And so actually thinking about having options and things like that, Bill, Craig, and Kevin, could you all tell us, considering the timeline and like some students that you work with and their characteristics, how should underclassmen prepare their college list right now? What are some aspects that you consider when searching for the ideal college?
So Kevin had mentioned fit, and several of us have mentioned fit, which is critical. For me, I break down that fit into 3 categories. Academic fit is, there are 2 components to that. Based on average SAT scores, average GPAs of admitted students, do you have a high probability of being admitted to the college? And also part of academic fit, if you've decided on a major, is that major available there, and is that major a strength of the college? You also, as we have talked about, financial fit. Is it affordable for your family, and what are the financial aid resources of that college? And the other one is social fit. Is this a place not just that I can survive for 4 years, but that I can where I'll thrive for 4 years? And there are a number of online tools that you can use for things to know about admitted students and financial aid. The College Board, My Big Future website has those figures on it. And then there are also sites that give you some insight into the college's culture. collegeexpress.com is one of those where you can learn more about the social fit.
I want to agree with Bill, because one of the things that Bill said is there's financial piece that's really critical. Earlier, Victoria made a very important point when she was talking about Princeton. And one of the things that she said is that they met 100% of her financial need. Now, that's great. Now, just be careful that making up that financial need does not include a lot of loans. Is a lot of grants and stuff available? Great.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Bill. Those are great information, great tidbits that you all have talked about thus far. And so thinking about the fit, right, and finding the right fit for you and things of that nature. For our underclassmen out there listening, what type of advice would you all, best practices that you will offer to applicants or students who are applying? And you can and don't feel afraid to share about your college experiences as well. Like, how did you get to your college of your choice and things of that nature?
So I can let me talk about mine very briefly, and to that point, Cornelius. So similar to Tim, I had great support in the college search process, both from my family, and both my parents went to college. I had an older brother and sister who went to college, and from my high school, where there was very much a college going culture. So it wasn't really a question of whether I was going, but is where I was going. So I prepared during my sophomore and junior year through college tours and things like that. And I decided to apply early decision to a small liberal arts college in Ohio. Decided that's where I wanted to go. Applied, but found out in November that I did not get in. So I really had to reset my college application or college search process. And in that process, decided that my number one choice was William and Mary, which is a public university in Virginia. Applied there along with a couple other colleges, and then found out in April that I'd been put on the waiting list there. And at the same time, had gotten into the college in Ohio that I'd been not gotten into early decision. But then I got in off the waiting list at William and Mary in May. That's where I enrolled. That's where I ended up earning 2 degrees. So the long point of that very long story, sorry about that, was that this is really a journey that you need to plan for, but also understand that it's certainly in my case, there were detours to that journey and a different destination different than the one I planned. So to be prepared for all that, and I think to start that journey early and just be prepared for the detours that may happen.
Thanks for sharing. Hey, Bill, that's a great story. Bill, you know who 2 Chainz is?
I don't know 2 Chainz.
2 Chainz is a rapper, right? And they call him 2 Chainz because he wears 2 chains. And you, my friend, even though all those obstacles got in your way, you went to a college and was able to get 2 degrees. So all my listeners out there, I need y'all to hold your 2s up right now, because even though you may not know which way your journey's headed, you can come out on the other end with 2 degrees. So, Bill, your new name's 2 degrees. Thanks for sharing. Dr. Naiker, anything else you'd like to add before we go into our final question?
Yes, mine is kind of different, and unique, because I grew up in a segregated society. There was no college-going culture. In fact, the only advice that was given to me growing up is get a job and stay out of jail. That's it. I was the first in my family to graduate from high school. So needless to talk about college. But the key is, because of those limited resources, I never gave up. Even my high school counselors never believed in me, but still I basically had that grit and resilience to go forward.
Strong emphasis there. I mean, Dr. Naiker, we see those trends all across the nation, whether they students be from DC, Florida, New York, Dallas. Sometimes that environment looks different. Sometimes there's only 2 options or 2 routes for you to go, but staying resilient, like you said, and seeing a way out of your current environment is always the best way to look at it.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, come on, Bill, give me that heat.
Just one more piece of advice. You're not going to do this with every college that you apply to, but I would really encourage our students and peer leaders to establish some contact with the admissions offices of the schools that they're most interested in. And that can be as simple as an email saying, here's my name, here's my high school, this is why I'd really be interested in coming to your college. Because admissions people really love getting to know the people behind the applications. And I think that can make a huge difference in the outcome of the admissions process and sometimes in the outcome of the financial aid process.
Spot on. Thank you for these caveats. For both of you gentlemen, in your role as director of college coaching, what are some of the common themes or characteristics you've observed from strong applicants? Now, when you have these one-on-one sessions at our summer workshop, what trends or characteristics do strong college applicants mostly portray?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So, Tim, I've got three basically. The first one is that I saw from strong applicants is that they know themselves. They know their strengths and they know some of the areas that they need to improve on, some of the challenges, and they're willing to work on that. The second thing is that they have grit. Grit, meaning they are willing to pursue their passion, even though it is difficult, even there's obstacles, they are willing to pursue in that. The third thing that I've seen with strong applicants, and this is more and more we see colleges looking at this, and this is their brand. What do I mean by brand? We know Nike has a brand, just do it. More and more individuals are looking at your own personal brand. Your own personal brand is, if you have two circles, so one is basically how you see yourself. And the second circle is how other people see yourself. And the interface between how you see yourself and how other people see yourself, that's your brand. Try building your brand. And if you build your brand, believe in your brand.
So totally agree with that, Kevin. And just to add to that a little bit, Tim, I think one, the successful applicants are strong students. And we know that in PeerForward, our peer leaders are coming to us with a wide range of GPAs. So strong student is not limited to a 4.0 GPA, but it is, in most instances, someone whose GPA is at least on an upward trend. As you look from 9th to 10th, 11th and 12th grade, that GPA is moving upward. The other part of that is strength of curriculum that students have been willing to take on some academic challenge. And it doesn't mean that every class has to be an honors class, every class has to be an AP or IB, but they've taken advantage of some of the academic rigor that their school offers. And also to the point of Kevin makes about knowing themselves and their brand, I think that's an awesome point, because the other peer leaders that have most impressed me are the ones that have some really significant involvement outside the classroom. And it's not the quantity of that involvement, but it's the quality. And it can be in athletics, it can be in drama, the school newspaper, community service. But when I think of one of the really most impressive about the many impressive peer leaders I met, it was a young woman who went to high school in a college town. Her transcript was ordinary at best, but she was very passionate about issues connected to social justice and economic justice and equity. And as part of that, got involved with a student group at the university and lobbied on behalf of improved wages and working conditions for the service workers on campus. So she knew her passion and acted on her passion.
That's real. That's real. And y'all said some great stuff, man. Grit and personal brand. We're going to call that grit and drip.
Oh, grit and drip.
You got to have your personal drip, man. Colleges, you have to stand out, whether it's your personal statement or when you're actually emailing them. But you want to make sure they remember y'all. And for a lot of y'all at the college fairs that's upcoming next year and the virtual ones, you got to think about what helps you stand apart from the rest of these students.
Right.
And so with that said, for our last question on our Q&A for our experts, with this whole global pandemic that we're going through, do you think the college landscape, i.e. application process, on-site admissions, even the online learning that we're experiencing right now, do you think that will change in any way? If so, just give us one quick tip on how.
So I think the most immediate impact of this is that a number of colleges, and I suggest more will follow suit, are going to be test optional next year because of the fact that the ACT and SAT have canceled their spring testing. So for instance, the whole University of California system will not require SAT or ACT testing for next year. So that's the most immediate impact.
One of the things I want to agree with Bill, and I think what is not clear yet is how this will change the admission field. And I hope it does change the admission field for good. Because what is happening, we've been so based on our system of what I call a testocracy. We focus on testing and grades. Maybe we need to look at some other things. And maybe this, I hope, that this issue will start changing colleges and looking at stuff other than test scores and grades, maybe much broader?
The one last thing I'll leave you with is that this is a time of year that most colleges sponsor admitted students weekend. So they invite students who have earned acceptances to the campus to learn more about the college and to see the campus in person. Obviously, those are not able to be held this spring, I don't think, anywhere. So colleges are holding many of those events virtually now. And I think if colleges increase their capacity, while you can't replicate, I don't think, the experience of an on-campus visit, if they can replicate that or increase their capacity for doing that virtually, I think that'll be a real help for students and families that don't have the resources or the time to make a lot of in-person campus visits. So maybe something positive will come out of this.
I agree.
Awesome. From grit and drip to testocracy, we like to give another round of applause to Dr. Naiker and Bill Craig for joining us for the perfect play. Give him up.
Perfect play.
We really appreciate your insight. We're going to segue into one of our summarizing points of the episode where we talk about our COLAs. Now, COLAs is not a soda, but it's an acronym for connections, observations, learnings, and acknowledgement. So if there's any COLAs from any of our listeners or guests that would like to share, now will be the perfect time, and I'll model it a bit for you. But just one learning today from Bill Craig and Dr. Naiker was one. Bill said that you're not only looking for a place where you can survive, but you're looking at a college where you can thrive at for the next 3 years. So that really stood out to me. And for Dr. Naiker, of the three goods, making sure it fits, making sure it's financially sound, and it's the perfect place for you and your environment. So those were two good learnings that really stood out to me. And I'll check our chat if we have any other COLAs, but any other speakers like to share a COLA? Oh yeah, sure. See.
So as the host today, man, it was a great information to get you all on the phone. But you made a great point. It's from a man, Mike, on taking your passion and allowing that to be highlighted on your college application. It's really tough. It's a real skill to actually make yourself what we call that PeerForward is a show, don't tell, right? So how do you show your true self, but not only just tell it? So making yourself jump off that page, whether it's on an application or a personal statement. So that was the connection I made today to kind of the work we do.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like to acknowledge for something that you said about the testocracy, is because I know that that's been such a huge thing for me, is thinking that my biggest barrier was my test scores, when in actuality, like, I could get through with everything. And so I'd like to acknowledge what you said of just thinking of this moment, not only as something that we're going through, but an opportunity for us to change in the future, for hopefully for colleges, universities, and other organizations that rely on testing to start to deprioritize that, because it doesn't make the whole person.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your COLAs. We're going to segue into the final portion of the perfect play and have our closing remarks led by our marketing representative, Victoria.
Thank you, Tim. So I just wanted to close by saying that if you really enjoyed today's conversation, you felt like you learned something, you connected with something, feel free to share it with more of your friends, your classmates, your family members. And of course, if you have any questions or if there's a certain topic that you want to hear more about from us, please feel free to get in touch with us through our DMs, comment on our Facebook posts, our Instagram posts, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at PeerForward, and stay tuned for more. We'll be coming out with these weekly. So if there are any topics that you really want us to cover, just let us know.
Shaq, thank you, Mark, and thank you to our expert panelists today, our special guests. Thank you to all of my coaches. Shouts out to the law, my co-host.
Already.
All day, man. Shouts out to all our listeners out there who've been giving us feedback and commenting on the post. But we just wanted to thank you all for this week and the third episode of The Perfect Play. Please share it with your peers, your parents, all listeners, because we know that knowledge is power. Check out our assets page on PeerForward.org. All educators and peer leaders out there, you have a special code where we have a resource to help you do virtual tours on college campuses right now. So if you have any questions about that, just leave a comment in the comment section below. We'll be sure to get that info to you if I haven't or if your coach hasn't done that already. But looking forward to next week, our next episode. We want to tap back into our peer leaders and hear from you all. So if you have any questions, any thing that you're experiencing right now, please let us know, because on episode 4, we will have our very first female host, AJ.
Whoop, whoop.
She's going to be tapping into how to learn the top 5 things to know about the tips and tricks to online learning. And so we're in a new age right now. And so just want to shout out to everyone out there. Be safe. Remember the 2 M's, movement, and what was it, Victoria?
Mindfulness.
And mindfulness. So movement and mindfulness. We'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to The Perfect Play.